Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help people explode into their lives through full impact mindfulness. We're not looking for people who are looking to find themselves. What we're looking for are people who want to create themselves. If you have the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try, those are the only tickets. That's the price of admission. Welcome aboard and let the adventure begin. My name is Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and as the followers of this shows know, we have an eclectic roster of guests, and tonight I'm really excited to have this individual who's more in tune to the pulp media culture type of situation that is, it permeates everybody's life today. And Mav, could you introduce yourself?
Hi. My name's Christopher Maverick. You can call me Mav. I'm many things, but mostly right now I am a professor of digital narrative interactive design in the English department at the University of Pittsburgh. I have the worst title ever, but I teach a lot of the classes about pop culture and English lit and cultural studies, and also computers and software design, which was my old career. And I still do a little bit of that. I used to be a software designer, and so Pitt uses me to teach sort of an integration of how the humanities touch technology.
So how did you fit all that on a business card, Mav?
I don't. There's a lot of we were talking offline about how I had a bunch of different jobs. There's been a little bit of floating from one thing to another, but mostly I sort of lucked into my current position. I was working as an adjunct for at Pitt while I was finishing up my PhD at Duquesne. And this job came up, and it was like, "Hey, we need somebody who has a background doing." They specifically wanted English lit and software design. And it's like I have that, and it was just like I already worked there, so it felt like a natural fit. They made me interview for it, and I didn't get like any special treatment or anything, but it worked out really pretty well, and I didn't have to move, so I'm pretty happy with the gig. And while I'm there, I also get to do the other stuff I love, which was teaching cultural studies stuff. I teach comics and graphic novel classes, things about TV and movies. That's been pretty much it's what I enjoy studying. So having the opportunity to sort of teach it from an academic point of view to, I call them kids. They're 18 through 23-year-olds. They're they're in college, but to kids who up until this point in high school have been taught that the study of English lit is to look at Shakespeare or to look at Tolstoy or to look at Fitzgerald or Hemingway or Gertrude Stein or classics, people who I like to read, but who it's really, really hard to sort of get kids to realize the connection that no, it's still the study of literature. It's still the exact same sort of theoretical concepts that you use if you're going to talk about Marvel movies or the Barbie movie or comic books or I don't know, TV shows like whatever's Real Housewives. It comes up a lot in my classes actually. So things like that. It's been real fun. I'm really happy to have the job.
Well, it sounds like you just didn't hatch there or spun the wheel and your number was picked. So how did all this happen, Chris?
Like I said, I was a software designer for many, many years. I went to Carnegie Mellon not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with art and I wanted to do something with computers. And so I did those things. And when I was, I don't know, in my sophomore or junior year, I took a class called Introduction to Youth Culture, and then I took a class the follow-up. No, actually, I took Intro to Youth Culture second. I took the history of rock and roll first, I think.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. It was just, it was but there was two classes that were about cultural studies, and that's where I learned that it didn't have to just be Shakespeare and Milton and whoever, Gertrude Stein, Bronte's sisters. Like that's what I thought English was. But I took this course that sort of taught me, no, you can listen to Hendrix, and that's like a class, um, and then I was like, and then the follow up class, and it's like, and you can go and you can watch Rebel Without a Cause, and that's a class. And I started realizing, hey, there's more to this. So when I graduated, I ended up double majoring in college in creative writing, and I was a creative writing major and a literary and cultural studies double major. And I was also like minoring in art and computer science, but I was doing those as my majors, and uh, fell in love with cultural studies so much that once I finished, I started working as a software designer full time. I started missing school, so I would do academic workshops, and I would go to conferences, and I would write papers. I would do homework in my spare time. So I would go on vacation to like an academic conference because I was a weirdo who just loved school that much. And then people kept saying, you should go back to grad school. And I was like, yes, but I have a job. And I did that for a long time, until I just started not liking being a designer more and more. I enjoyed being a designer, but I hated the corporate mentality of having a what I call real people job. That I just didn't like it. It didn't agree with me, and I was just living for these times where I could be like, all right, I'm gonna go to work, and then I will leave, and I will come home, and I will read Marx. Or I will read Freud, or I will read Judith Butler. These people who were just like things that I was doing for fun, and then I'll go to the PCACA, this Pop Culture Association conference, and like that was my fun thing, to the point where I was a software design contractor for many many years, for like 15 years, and I was getting more and more fed up with it. And I got laid off from one job, a job that I did not particularly like, but I got laid off from it when that contract ended, and I was like, I guess I go look for another job. And my wife said to me, you're miserable. Why don't you go do something that you really like? Like you've always said you enjoyed, you know, this weird cultural studies thing you do. You could go to grad school for that. And I thought, what if I did that? And she's like, well, you should look into it. See when grad school applications are due. So I went and I looked at, no, I lived in Pittsburgh already. So I looked at the University of Pittsburgh when their grad school applications were due, and the date had already passed. And I checked Duquesne, and the date had passed, and Point Park, and the date had already passed, and CMU, and the date was 3 days later. And Steph's my wife, said, okay, well, maybe you should try to do it for next year. And I was like, no, 3 days, I can do that. And my wife told me it's impossible to apply to grad school in 3 days. And I said, why? And she's like, well, you know, are your GRE scores even still good? And I was like, GREs, I guess I have to take those, don't I? I've never taken the GRE. So I did that. I literally decided I wanted to go to grad school on a Thursday or Friday. Yeah, like a Thursday night. Like I decided I wanted to go to grad school on a Thursday night, took the GREs on a Saturday morning, and had all my materials submitted. I basically wrote some friends and old professors, and it's like, can you write me a letter of recommendation by Monday? And I submitted everything on Monday. And then 6 months later, I was a master's student. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much how I did it. It was literally going from sometime in January to, all right, I guess I'm starting this in August. And it was that fast with the turnaround. And then I did that, and then when I left that, I went after a PhD, and I had a little more time for that one. But I got a PhD from Duquesne, and I've not looked back. This has been my life now, and it's great because it's been the culmination of so many other things that that I like. It's my job. I always joke about this. I always say, at work, I piss off some of my colleagues because I'll say stuff like people with real jobs, and they're like, "This is a real job." It's like, this is not a real job. My job is to go and talk to people about books and movies, a thing that I would have done for free, you know, like a decade ago. You guys are paying me to do this professionally, and I love it. And it's not a complaint. It's that I used to have to work at a bank and and write software, and I hated that job. This is a job. My career is I go and I hang out with 20-year-olds and I talk to them about pro wrestling or about video games. And that's a dream job for me. So it's great. Like, my life is just sort of culminated in getting to do this. And I teach a class. I teach classes about podcasting. I teach classes about superhero movies. Like it is unbelievably. I am unbelievably fortunate and thankful and grateful. But it's just sort of worked out. So.
Well, you're fortunate. However, it was the action and effort that you took that made all this possible.
Yeah, it didn't. I mean, it wasn't. I talk about it like it just fell out of the sky. It didn't. It was a lot of hard work. But what I will say is, I have been, the way humanities as a field works in academia, it is very, very hard. And so I've seen other people who are as talented or as smart as me not be able to get to stay in academia just because there aren't enough jobs to go around. So I feel grateful and thankful, and I don't. It's not that I didn't work hard, but I know that hard work alone is not enough. Sometimes you have to also be lucky, and so I think that is part.
Well, you're a 20-year overnight success, Mav.
Yes, yeah, it was a long road to get there. It really, it really was. It was. Like, I had a bunch of publications before I started grad school because I was, as a hobby, doing this. I became a professional wrestler because I thought it would be an interesting thing to write a paper about. Like, that was literally it. I saw an ad and I was just like, I've always liked pro wrestling, and what if I became a pro wrestler, and then I'd be able to talk about it from a cultural studies point of view as someone who had done it. Participant observation, so autoethnography is what we'd call it in cultural studies. And I was like, this could be a thing. And people were like, but that's crazy. Won't people hit you? And it's like, how bad could it be? That was basically how I ended up in the wrestling ring. So,
well, it's hard to take anybody further down a road than you've been yourself, Mav.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is connecting with younger people, and as everyone out there in our podcast land knows, I'm in long-term recovery. I'm a big 12-step person, and in the 12-step world, we say that the message that can interest and hold people must have depth and weight. So sometimes the younger people just can't relate to what English literature, let's say 17th, 18th, 19th century English literature.
Yeah, and I get that, I guess, because I'm not going to say that I didn't enjoy it. I'm a kid who was fascinated by Shakespeare. I was fascinated by Chaucer. Like I said, I love reading Emily Dickinson, so I always loved classics. But I also never really thought they were relevant until basically I just happened into a class where the professor, David Shumway, he still teaches at Carnegie Mellon, where he basically was like, everything that you've learned you can use for anything. So instead of reading Great Gatsby, we're going to watch Rebel Without a Cause. Same concept, and that really opened a lot of doors for me. So,
well, I remember when I was in ninth grade, I had an English teacher, and she was taught English, and she was going to go over the play Hamlet, and I thought, oh, how boring could this possibly be? But she made that so interesting. She explained to us what the nuances were and how it connected, and the wordplay and behind it, and she made it come alive, and she developed a great love of Shakespeare for me. Mm-hmm. It's the teacher. It's the mess. She was the messenger, and she gave a great message.
I hope I can do that sort of thing. It's sort of, I get good feedback from my students. A lot of it is performance. It's the same kind of thing as being you know, teaching at its essence is performing like on stage. It's just a very weird stage where you have to like also know a whole bunch of stuff in order to do it. You can't just make everything up. But the kids seem to like me because I'm willing to sort of make those connections. And I I I don't see why I don't want to. This is going to sound like I'm simplifying or oversimplifying. I don't see why everyone doesn't love that about teaching, because it is such a wonderful way of sort of connecting with the world, with saying like it to me. If I can make someone read Romeo and Juliet and see that this is the story of a really horny 14-year-old girl and a really horny 17-year-old boy, and they just really don't care about anything their families are doing. They're just trying to have sex, and because of hormones, everything else just gets in the way. And once you break that story down like that to a 19-year-old sophomore, they go, okay, yeah, I remember what it was like to be 14 and horny, and then, but for people being reasonable, sure, I probably would have married my first boyfriend, and I was probably over emo, and probably would have made bad decisions. Like they get it, and so you can like make things relevant that way if you can connect them to language that makes sense in 2024.
Well, if we can learn how to talk with people rather than at them, Mav. I speak at a lot of rehabs, and that's one of the first things I tell them when I come up, when I start my talk. I say, I'm here to talk with you, not at you, because most people have been talked at to most of their life.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's. I mean, obviously, I've not had that experience, but it is the thing that makes teaching work best for me, uh, at least at a collegiate level. Is I always say I couldn't teach high school because I swear too much, um, and I say that jokingly, but the truth is I want to be able to sit in a room and have a real conversation with the kids, about the things that they care about, and take their, obviously I have expertise that they don't have. They are there to learn from me. There is a power dynamic where I'm going to be in charge and they're not going to be. I get that. But the the experience works better if it is a discussion where they are empowered to realize that their ideas and their thoughts matter just as much as mine.
Yes.
Are they as correct as mine? Maybe not. I mean, I've got things that I went to school for a long time, so I can help you along the way. But your experience when you read anything, if you read a great classic, if you read Romeo and Juliet and you see something different than what I explained, and you really want to tell me that no, this is a story about true love, that they are soulmates or whatever, I don't believe that. But if you can articulate it in a way that is meaningful to you, then that is valid and it becomes a valid reading. So that's how the study of English lit has always worked. So therefore, why should it be any different just because one of us is 50 and the other one's 18?
Be sure to join us next week as we continue our conversation with our engrossing guest, Chris Maverick. And as a free gift, we offer a free prescription. Fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste, my friends.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.